Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 of the Rebekah Beneteau show, where we are helping you own your pleasure and find your power. I'm Rebekah Beneteau, the world's foremost authority on cultivating your sexual authenticity. And you guys, we are really getting a treat today. And I include me in that equation because I have a guest, Ryder, and I are going to be having a conversation today for your benefit all about pegging. So, hi, Ruby, welcome.
Thank you. Really happy to be here. Thanks for asking me to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for those of you who have not heard of Ryder, she is a pegging guru, sex podcaster, sex blogger, speaker, writer of erotica, and educator. And if you don't know what pegging is, you're really going to want to stay tuned because I think that we are going to demystify a sexual activity that can be a lot of fun and a lot of pleasure. Right, Ruby?
Absolutely.
All right. So I guess for those who don't know, why don't you tell people what pegging is?
So pegging this was a word that was actually brought into being by Dan Savage because somebody wrote into his show and said, there's no differentiation between lesbian strap-on sex and heterosexual strap-on sex, which is where the woman puts on the dildo and the harness and penetrates the man anally. And so he devoted, I think, the next 3 columns of his to holding a contest, getting suggestions, and then having a vote, and pegging won. So that is the definition. So it doesn't mean penetrating anybody anally, and it doesn't include same gender sex. It's pretty much limited to, I guess, bio woman penetrating bio man. With all the gender fluidity and everything, it gets complicated sometimes, and I've started to default to calling it giver and receiver, but the key part is the receiver has a prostate. That's the key part. Mm-hmm.
Great. And how did you get into this?
Oh my gosh. So I have always been, ever since I became sexual, I've always been somewhat anally obsessed. Don't know why, just kind of there. And I grew up in a very open-minded household. We actually had Penthouse Letters Forum. So that's all the letters from Penthouse, all those cheesy letters, right? Yeah. On the coffee table when I was about 16. So that was handy. I would just flip it right over to anal, Uh-huh. So one day I was reading the stories, and it was this, again, very cheesy Penthouse story about 2 couples. And the guys would always go to the bar and watch football games. So the women had named themselves football widows. And, they drink, and they came home one time after drinking, and the women were waiting with footballs on the floor. They had their guys bend over as if they were centers. I told you it was cheesy. And they fucked him in the ass, right? And it was like an epiphany for me. It was like, oh my God, you can do that? Mm-hmm. So that fantasy, that desire, that amazing thing grabbed a hold of me and held on for decades. But unfortunately, I didn't do anything with it for a long, long time because, like many people who have desires that aren't mainstream and accepted by society and all that, I labeled it bad and weird and different and strange. Mm-hmm. And I actually approached both of my ex-husbands with the possibility, but you know how I did it. I approached them kind of going, so there's this thing that, I was so shamey and so embarrassed. Mm-hmm. And they both kind of politely said, no thanks. And because of all that shame, I didn't have enough self-confidence and persistence to say, well, now, wait a minute. This is important to me. This turns me on. Can we talk about this? Mm-hmm. I just filed it away until I hit my 50th birthday. I was divorced for the 2nd time. And I thought, if not now, when? Mm-hmm. And I've gone down the rabbit hole ever since, and I'm still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. I tell women that are afraid of getting older that 40 was like the beginning of freedom where I was willing to be myself, but 50 was like, if you don't like me, take a walk. Yes. It was really like, it's my life, my body. I'm going to do with it what I want.
totally agree. Yes, that's exactly how I felt.
Yeah, great. So what would you recommend for someone who is now in this stage of, I think I might be interested in this? I think start with, let's talk to the women maybe first and then talk to the men and then get it together, you know?
Well, if we talk to the women who are interested in pegging, it usually goes the opposite direction where the man is interested in it. He discovers pleasure in that area of his body, and he's the one sort of driving the train, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So the women get asked to participate. But sometimes the women find out about it. It catches their imagination or their desire for whatever reason, and they're the ones driving the train again, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, the educational part is just basic beginning anal knowledge. I mean, any woman who has received anal has a pretty good idea of what doesn't work a lot of times, unfortunately, because there's so little good information being spread out there especially amongst young people. I mean, I wish, wouldn't it be great if there was like a pleasure-based sex education that was required for all young people, so they don't just learn about diseases and how to say no, they learn that it's pleasure-based and how to say yes to things.
Right, right.
So education is what I would recommend for women who are the ones driving the train.
Mm-hmm.
But other women who have been asked to and are looking into it often have major concerns and misconceptions. Their first one is almost always, he must be gay, which I always have to laugh about because that's the way the words usually come out. But I mean, honey, if he's fucking you,
right,
he's at least bi, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you know, that connotation is so strong that male anal play equals gay that it just kind of blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I tell people. The area of your body that you enjoy having stimulated has no bearing on the gender you prefer to do the stimulating, right? Mm-hmm. And there is no magic button inside your ass that when pushed makes you suddenly crave hairy, muscular bodies. That's just not the way it works.
Right.
And one of the other misconceptions is if they've seen any pegging porn, there's a whole lot of things that pegging porn almost always portrays that does not have to go with pegging. There's feminization, where the guy gets dressed up as a woman. There's humiliation and degradation and calling him names and things. And please understand, these are things that some people really get off on and party on if that's what you love. Mm-hmm. But they don't have to be a part of it. They are not inextricably connected to it. And also, a lot of times they fear that it's painful, sort of like, why would my partner want to do something that's so painful? That misconception, I think, arises from having bad experiences. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's a lot of women that talk about, no anal, it's way too painful. Mm-hmm. Well, the reality is that if it's painful, you're not doing it right.
Right.
And occasionally they have concerns about, this is going to destroy my femininity. Excuse me. And I had to learn this one because that did not happen to me. And basically it's sort of like, if I strap on this fake cock, you know, I will no longer have the femininity that I love and cherish. And it's going to affect that somehow. Right. So yeah, that's a big hurdle for some women that are really entrenched in sort of the gender, not stereotypes, but, you know, the cultural expectations.
Mm-hmm. Now, is it still pegging if she doesn't wear the dildo, but just uses a handheld toy?
No, you know, I've been asked that so many times, and I don't know. I think technically it falls into the category of anal play, but because, you know, you're using a toy and you're doing anal play, there is something that's very powerful and sexy about strapping it on and having that body movement thing and the fucking thing. It's very powerful and really, it can be very sensual and just, I don't know, I keep coming back to the word powerful. Yeah. Because it's two bodies coming together and doing their thing, just like with PIV, you know.
And what's the potential for a man to learn about himself by being penetrated?
Well, let's look at the other side of the coin. Those are the things that the women get concerned about. So, so men get concerned about, what does this say about me? That is their kind of side of the coin of the he's gay thing.
Mm-hmm.
What does this say about me? And maybe I really do like men. And so that's a hurdle that they have to get beyond. But also just, it's a very deep, vulnerable, receptive, and tender place. I mean, it's a pretty intense thing to allow someone to penetrate you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that they have to get past. I mean, amongst men and the bro thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you get your man card taken away if in some circles, if you admit that you love this kind of thing. So one of the things that men are also afraid of is that their women will tell. That's a big one. That's huge.
Mm.
But at the same time, there is a preponderance of men who are in very powerful situations and jobs, and they're manly men, whether it's in the boardroom or their bodies, and they crave being able to let go and let her, I call it run the fuck, basically. Well, because, they run things all the time.
Right.
And then they come home and they get in their bed with their partner and they run the sex too. And sometimes it's really nice to not have to run it.
Yeah. I mean, I find that very much in the kink world, that a lot of submissive men, the majority, are extremely powerful. They're CEOs, they're firemen, they're policemen.
Yes.
And like you said, that ability to just not have to run the show is huge.
Yes.
And I think also, I remember Marianne Williamson once said that all men are feminine in the face of God.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That ability to surrender and receive is actually a huge gift. I have a feeling that if more men were willing to be penetrated, we would not be seeing the levels of abuse that we have seen of women, because they would just have, I think, more sensitivity to what it feels like to be on the bottom, to be penetrated.
Yeah. Interesting you should mention that. Some years back, I did a talk, and afterwards, I invited questions. And one of the men asked, have you seen any evidence, or have you heard people talking about how men who have been pegged are more peaceful? What an interesting word. Mm-hmm. Well, so here's what I have noticed. Men who enjoy pegging soften a little bit. They become a little bit more aware of their partner in a variety of different ways. Because, basically what you're doing with pegging is you are giving each other an opportunity, and taking that opportunity as well to experience sex from the opposite side of the bed, kind of. Mm-hmm. So what you get to do is you get to experience what your partner usually experiences during sex. And man, what an eye-opener for couples. Holy moly. Yeah. Guys figure out that it's a pretty intense thing being penetrated, and maybe not every night is a penetration night. Mm-hmm. They learn how important foreplay is. Mm. And they learn about just totally letting go and receiving. And that can all be really, really powerful. So women, I laugh every time I say this, they have no idea what it takes to fuck somebody. They don't have a clue.
I know.
It takes endurance and strength and grace and balance and multitasking. Yeah. And multitasking to a degree that women will never truly understand, even with a strap on, because men have to have enough fun to keep it hard, but not too much fun to end things too soon. Mm-hmm. So we have no idea what that feels like, and we never will. But all of those other things, yeah, it's a bit of an athletic event. And when I teach my classes, I say that, and I say, man, you try this, women, you try this pegging thing, and you will have a huge appreciation for your men, because men rock, and they all kind of sit up a little taller and smile and nod their heads, and, appreciation, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was shocked in the beginning how completely awkward and bad at it I was. Like, it's a learned skill. It takes some practice, and I kept falling out. And
Yes. Well, and until you mentioned that, see, we haven't talked beforehand, so I didn't know that you'd actually already tried it, which is way cool. And the learning curve is steep, absolutely.
Yeah.
But because of that exchanging roles, it deepens intimacy, because what happens is you understand your partner's usual role, and you have compassion for it. So understanding and compassion deepen intimacy. And the other thing that deepens intimacy as well is just trying out a new sex thing, because sometimes it is really awkward. But if you're with that partner who you trust and love, you guys are laughing instead of being freaked out about it. And it's a beautiful thing. It really is. I'm so passionate about it. It's like pegging will save the world.
That's your motto, right? Changing the world one ass at a time.
One ass at a time, yeah. And that does not mean that I'm going to fuck them all.
Right. You would be very busy, tired woman if that were the case. But
I would not be here having this conversation with you.
Yeah, right. Well, so for people who are grooving on this, I'm just going to mention it now. We'll probably mention it again later. But Ruby's website, Pegging 101, that's pegging and then the numbers 101.com, is loaded with information and tips. And she's based in California, although I imagine you sometimes travel and teach, right?
I do, occasionally, yeah.
And do coaching consultations with people, one-on-one as well?
I do that occasionally. I am right at the break point of getting webinars up and happening, because traveling as a sex educator, as I'm sure you probably experienced, just basically doesn't pay. It would be lovely if someone just said, oh, let me fly you over here and put you up and pay your expenses and pay you for teaching. But that's not how things work in the sex educator world unless you get to the very, very top. So you just kind of have to find your way and work around it. And webinars is one way to do that.
Right.
So that's what's coming up next on my plate. I do have my podcasts as well. And those can really help people learn quite a bit. But I'm totally open to and have done some consultations one-on-one if somebody doesn't want to wait for the webinars and like they're in New York or wherever in the world, really.
Yeah, cool. Where can people find your podcast?
That you can find on iTunes, as well as all of the podcast downloader apps for Android and iPhone. And it's under Ruby Ryder's Pegging Paradise. And it is also posted right up on my blog, peggingparadise.com. And so you can stream it directly from there if you'd like as well.
Great. So I have a question for the couple that wants to get started doing this. What tools and toys, where's a good place to begin?
So what I tell people who are interested in starting is that I'm a big fan of anticipation and taking things slowly and savoring every single step. Because, you read these things online sometimes about, and my girlfriend and I started talking about pegging, and we went down to the toy store and we got it and we came home and we did it. You can do that, yeah, and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it'll be fun. But there's so many things that you can do before that are so delicious, like just anal play to begin with. I've got some articles up on pegging101.com on both blogs. And again, the differentiation between Pegging 101 is that there's no kink involved. And that's for the people that are just wanting to learn about pegging without any other kinky BDSM stuff. Peggingparadise.com has the kink included. So on both of those websites, you can find a couple of articles. One is for the guy to explore his own ass, because I look at it this way. It's sort of like, would you like to go to bed with someone and have sex with them who's never masturbated? Right. It really pays to know your own body. Plus, coming from the man's point of view, if you experiment yourself, then you're much more confident that you can sort of take what she's going to give you, so to speak, when you get to the moment of. But backing up some, I also have an article for couples, like beginning anal exploration, her giving to him. And it tells about where the prostate is, how to find it. There's an amazing amount of things that are pretty much almost identical with G-spot descriptions, where you get that come hither thing, the come hither, and it's inside and towards the belly button. So if he's on his back, that's where it's going to be. And if he's on his stomach, then again, it's that way, right? And it's a lot of communication. So good communication is essential first, because if you can't talk in bed, you should not be doing varsity level stuff.
Right.
So you want to keep in communication, how does this feel and that kind of thing. And in the beginning, it may feel just sort of like something's in there and I kind of have to go for the guy. sometimes it's a process of like waking up that spot. Other men feel tremendous pleasure right off the bat. But when you say, how should they go about beginning? I like the idea of doing that and doing anal play in addition to other sex things, to finish it off or beforehand for a number of times until then you graduate to the next bigger thing, like a little toy. And then eventually what you do is you use the dildo, like you said, by hand. Now, the advantage of the woman doing that is that when she does that, she's learning what he likes. She's learning fast or slow, deep or not too deep, angle, how quickly should I penetrate, things like this. You learn all that by doing it with your hand, so that when you finally strap it on as a woman, you know what you're sort of aiming for, you know what he likes. So all of that are delicious things in and of their own, and plus the anticipation is equally as delicious. I'm a big fan of anticipation.
The talking about it, the stories, the describing it. Really.
Oh, you could go even further. The texting back and forth. Ooh, we're going to do, ass play number 2 tonight, honey, whatever.
Yeah. Well, aren't there something like 5,000 nerve endings around the anus?
Yes.
As many as the clitoris, I think.
The tissue that is basically the tissue that, I'm not sure what it's called, but it gives you the orgasms, does wrap around there as well. And plus it's really close to the vagus nerve, which is a whole nother conversation, but stimulating the vagus nerve is phenomenally good for your body and relaxing and amazing. So there's that as well. Absolutely. But the vast majority of men who try anal play really like it. I've run across a few, just a very few in all the years I've done this, which has been since 2010, who just kind of shrug their shoulders and go, not a big deal, can't get into it, not feeling anything. So I again would equate it to G-spot. There are some women who are like, no big deal, and I can't come from it. There are some guys who are like, no big deal, and even though I love it, I can't come from it.
Right. I was going to ask about that, because I know in the porn, the guy is always raging hard, but it's been my experience that quite a few men, when they are penetrated, lose their erection.
Yes, and there's no percentages because nobody does studies on this. Somebody grant me a whole bunch of money, I'd be happy to do a study on this. However,
right.
You will find men who are raging hard the whole time. You will find men whose erections come and go. And you will find men who couldn't get hard if their life depended on it. And that's all fine. There is no normal. It's all fine, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon, because as women, many times we are trained to look for the erection to judge whether or not he's having a good time.
Right.
And you can't do that. You have to ask. Here's the deal. I mean, not only is that sort of a side effect, but some men really don't like their cock touched while they're getting fucked, because they want to concentrate on the pleasure in their prostate. They want to concentrate on that because they call it distracting sometimes. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that whether or not, and actually, this is true of all sexual acts, that whether or not there's an erection is not an indication of how much pleasure he's having. And in fact, it's pretty little known that you can come from a soft cock. He can come. So he could be having plenty of fun and plenty of sensation. Yeah.
Indeed. So you want to see some toys that I have?
Yes.
You said, bring props. And I'm like, yay. Okay, so when people talk about harnesses, there's fabric harnesses and leather harnesses. And the fabric harnesses are really comfortable. They're washable, so they're really convenient. And they're also elastic, so there's a tiny bit of give, like a 1/4 inch of give. That's the only downside to them, really. And one of my favorite ones is this one. This is a beautiful black on black here, but let's put it against me. So see the garters?
Yeah.
Right? This is a spare parts Sasha. And this is great for women who have those concerns of not feminine enough, And then it's got shearing up the back. So it kind of emphasizes the butt cheeks. My focus going in and out here.
Yeah, can't really see the shearing because of the black on black, but the garters are definitely very sexy.
Yeah. And so, and Spare Parts is one of my very favorite companies. They make incredible quality harnesses. And I do mean incredible. They're pricey, but goodness, save up and wait. And interestingly enough, also on both of those websites, I have a do-it-yourself scarf harness designed by Midori.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you can use that meanwhile while you're saving up. And the reason I really encourage this is because you hear so many stories about the people that say, oh, but we want to try this and we don't have a whole lot of money. So they spend $30 on Amazon.
Right.
And then sometime later, they eventually, if they decide they love pegging, I mean, it's possible for the equipment to be so bad it puts them off of pegging.
Mm-hmm.
But if they love it and they upgrade at some point in time, I get the letters. Oh my God, we left the Doc Johnson BS Vaculock thing behind.
Uh-huh.
And now we have this, and goodness sakes, it's so much better, so much easier.
Yeah.
And then you've got some really yummy leather harnesses. This is Aslan leather. Get this the right way up here. So this is this beautiful, yummy leather harness.
Oh, those are my colors too.
Well, this is Nicki Minaj pink, I think. Seriously.
Okay.
And then it's got this beautiful corset back too.
Oh, gorgeous. Yeah.
Which some D-rings that can be used very creatively as well.
Is it getting hot in here, folks, or is it just me?
Is it what?
I said, is it getting hot in here, or is it just me?
They also have purple, which is my favorite.
Yeah.
They have Prince purple, right? Mm-hmm. So those are the two, I would say that they're the two best harness companies out there. There are some lesser ones that are perfectly fine, but I mean, equipment is like a whole hour conversation. So let me just give you two more possibilities. When you choose your first dildo, a couple of different things can happen. And this can happen on either side of the equation. You can be scared that it's too big, so you get something really, really tiny. And if it's as big as your finger, just use your finger. That's what I tell people. Or you could have been fantasizing about it for so long that you totally, your eyes are bigger than your ass, kind of. And that's not good either. That's definitely not good. So the general size that I recommend starting with is about 1 1/4 inches. So that's this. Mm-hmm. This is a Blush Novelties Real Nude line. It's called the Ergo Mini, and it's got a little suction cup bottom. Mm-hmm. And it's dual density. So it has a softer outer core, which is a little more forgiving, and a functional inner core that is hard for you to make sure you can use it okay. Mm-hmm. And this is the same thing, just a bigger size. Mm. These are really nice. See the softness here is amazing. Mm. And there are many, many, many dildos out there. The one that I didn't get to bring to do this interview with you is the double. And I call them doubles because they're not strapless. I have a whole campaign about that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what I have, and I didn't bring it either. But it's got a bulb that goes inside me, and it's got a piece that goes out, and it's a starter one. It's pretty small, but I found that it's really hard to keep in without a harness. So I wear the harness as well, and then I don't have to worry about it going anywhere.
Yes. Well, I have it right over there. You want me to go get mine so I can show the?
Just so folks can see. Sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, because, and I'll just keep talking, the advantage of one that goes internally is that I get stimulation both externally and internally from the act of penetrating someone else. So that is a benefit to women as a provider. So.
Yeah, we're finding it.
Okay. Take your time. I'm going to look to see, yes, if I asked most of my questions. We're doing great. I'll just mention Ruby's websites again. Pegging101.com, which is really factual information just for people who are interested in pegging, and peggingparadise.com, which is more expanded and includes some kink. I've looked around on there. She's got terrific erotica and imagery. And, you know, I want to say something to those of you watching, like, tune into your own body as she's doing this show and tell. And did you notice that things were making you tingle? Before your brain came in and went, stop that, don't go there, not allowed. Like, just for this, you know, 15, 20 minutes that we're talking, allow yourself to be turned on by what you're turned on by. I know that you're in good company. There are just thousands upon thousands of people that enjoy it too. Yay, she's back.
Yeah, you know, she's back, and she does not have the one that's her favorite, but at least I have one that is an example to show. My very favorite double is the Fuse Tango. But this is a Fun Factory share. Mm-hmm. So just to give you an idea of what we mean when we talk about doubles, this is what they look like. This part goes inside the woman, and supposedly you can hang on to this with your muscles. Which is why they call them strapless. And people get sucked into this all the time. And what I mean by sucked into it, the guy is driving the train, right? He's like, "Ooh, I want to do this, and I'm going to get the equipment." A lot of times he does, even though I really, really advise both people talking about getting the equipment together and buying it together. So he sees the thing about strapless and thinks a couple of things. One is, well, I can save a little money, but also there's some beautiful pictures on the internet of women with these things in and this beautiful purple cock sticking out from between her lips. And it's like, it's really sexy, but it's not functional. And they end up at my website is what happens. And they write me. So basically I wrote to all the companies that make these and protested that they were doing misleading marketing. They were actually doing a disservice to their customers. Really, the only one that listened well was Fuse, and they changed what they wrote on their packaging as well as their website. Wow. Metis Black, who owns Tantus, I bent her ear at one show, and I started going on about this thing about the doubles because it's a waste of my time, frankly. They show up at my website and say, "What did we do wrong? We couldn't get it to work." Right. So she invited me, lovely woman that she is, to write an article about that. And it's up on their educational blog on Tantus as well as on my two blogs. And it's called The Truth About Strapless Strap-Ons. Awesome. All right, so I think there's two topics that I would want to make sure we get to before we wrap up. And number one is lube. So important. So important. Lube. This is, in my opinion, the holy grail of pegging lube. Sliquid is one of the best companies I've ever run across. And Sliquid has all the good ingredients and none of the bad. And it's, you know, we don't have enough time to talk about all the bad ingredients, but there's a bunch of them out there. Yeah. So this is a hybrid lube that's partly water-based and a little bit, like 12%, silicone-based. So people freak out about that and go, "Oh my God, silicone in the lube with the silicone toy." It's not a problem at all. I have so many different toys I can't begin to tell you because they send them to me all the time. I have Vixen Creations, I have Tantus, I have Fun Factory, I have Fuse, I could go on. I have the Enjoyous, I have everything. Not one toy has ever been harmed by this lube. So there's your reassurance there. And the fact is actually that really, really good quality silicone lube is okay with really, really good quality silicone toys. Right. So you just have to stick with the good companies. Right. It's longer lasting and it's got some heft to it. And everybody that tries it says, "Whoa, this improved the whole experience." So yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's so that. Important. Listen to her. She knows this is a woman who truly has a bag of dicks. It's called Sliquid Silk. And you might get on the website and see that they have Sliquid Silk Organic. Don't get that one. Oh, okay. Not the organic one. Not the organic. Because the organic has aloe vera in it and it tends to dry out. It's perfectly fine for vaginal, but not for anal. Okay, right, because there is no natural lubrication back there. Exactly. And then here's the other thing that I think is big for a lot of people, the yuck factor, cleanliness. Right. Right. So here's the quick thing about that. First of all, there's no getting around that this is the area of the body that you're dealing with. And so, all kinds of puns can be made, shit happens, stuff like that, right? And if it freaks you out, and if you're going to get freaked out by a little bit of a mess, you probably shouldn't be pegging. So that's the first thing I would say. But of course, we all want to try and have it be a pretty clean experience, a non-yucky experience.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some people out there who advise enemas. I think that's a little over the top.
Mm-hmm.
The physiology of the area is that your rectal canal goes so far. Mm-hmm. And then there's a sphincter, and that is what stops the excrement up in the colon from coming down, okay? Most of the time where you're playing is in here. The prostate is in the rectal canal. Mm-hmm. So unless you have an extraordinarily long toy, you're not going to go past that. And plus, the sphincter tends to keep all of that contained anyway. So what you really want to do is just rinse out the rectal canal. In that case, you can just use like a bulb syringe, which has a little end on it. And that bulb syringe can be filled up with, if you're a purist, you can do, the purified water with the saline and stuff. I just use tap water. Just do it in the shower. But if you really like, because there are some people out there who actually like enema play, it's part of what they love, their kink kind of. If you do decide to do an enema to really clean out, what you're doing is forcing water further up into the colon and cleaning out further up there. Okay, that's good. That's what you want to do. You don't have to. But if you decide to do that, do it at least 2 hours ahead of time. Because what ends up happening is water gets caught in the folds of the colon when you have an enema. And then when you get up, you vacate the first time, right? And you think you've got all of it, but then you get up and you walk around and a little bit more comes out. You don't want that coming out during sexy times. That is not a good thing.
So doing it far enough in advance of
2 hours ahead with an enema. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm going to make a pitch too for gloves for the ladies. If you're doing penetration, if it, you have fingernails, you have jagged bits, it's also just safer if you have a cut on your finger, depending on whether or not you're fluid bonded with your partner. Gloves don't have to lessen sensation in any way.
No, plus gloves can be really awesome because I find that, gloves are perfect for initial sort of digital penetration, if you will, in the beginning when you're kind of doing foreplay and opening them up. But then as you progress and you actually penetrate them with the strap on, it's cool to be able to just whip that glove off, and now you can do something else with this hand. And not have to think about where it was.
Right, exactly.
And it's just a cleaner thing than just grabbing a towel and wiping it off, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's so many things that go along with the pegging formula that I have found are so helpful, like the liberator throw on the bed, and the specific kind of bulb syringe to clean yourself out that's all silicone and can be sanitized.
Wow.
There's so many things that over the years I've gone, this is exactly what we needed. So yeah.
There you go. So folks, Ruby and I could probably sit here and talk all afternoon about this stuff, but we can't. But you can.
So I have a question for you.
All this stuff. Yeah. What?
I have a question for you. Just in a few words, what was it like the first time you tried it? You said awkward. Yeah,
awkward, but also very empowering. You're right. There was just a feeling, and I'm a dominant as well. So for me, there were just all of those facets of being in control of the situation and
nice.
Having a dick. Like, oh, this is what it feels like to be, I have a cock. Not really. I don't have testosterone, but all of that, and for me, I like looking at it come out of my body.
Right.
I like how it looks. Yeah. And I like possessing people. That's just kind of my thing. And this is
me too.
This is the way that happens. But if the partner I'm with isn't into being possessed, it doesn't have to be that. It can just be about the butt. And, I think when we get beyond all that conditioning that we've been given about, I was in a class once where they said sexual freedom was being willing to do everything. So we had to stick our nose in there. We had to stick our tongue in there. everything.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized that was that a lot of what I imagined was not true. It wasn't disgusting. It didn't taste disgusting. It was just, this is a person I love, and this is a part of their body. And part of having a good sex life is to just be okay with all the things that come out of a body.
Yes, yes. One of my favorite methods of foreplay is rimming. I mean, I think that there's really nothing that opens up an ass quite the same way and as how lovely and deliciously as a warm, wet tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorites to receive and to give.
Yeah, very fun. Well, this has been really fun, and I've loved talking to you. So everybody, check out Ruby's website. You know that you can come check out me at pleasureevolution.com, where we're talking about all kinds of things that could be part of your claiming your full erotic potential. So until
Thank
the
you,
next,
Rebekah.
thank you very much, Ruby. So everybody, own your pleasure, find your power. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.